This podcast is for adults only, should not be used as a meal replacement, and may contain nuts.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Noobie and the Doobie. My name is Timmy. I am the Noobie.
Marijane, I am the Doobie.
We are so excited today to have with us on the spot Chef Jordan Wagman, somebody we had met at Lyft here in Toronto not too long ago, and very excited to have him on the show today. Jordan, welcome to On the Spot.
Thank you both. Nice to see you.
I am loving those glasses. The vibes right away are pretty outstanding.
These old things, they match the pants.
That's awesome.
Sweet. I don't normally show waist down because I do a lot of these shows without pants. I'm completely against pants, but today it's pajama pants. So
amazing,
yep.
Amazing. Well, I'm not wearing underwear if that counts for anything.
I love.
I don't think any of us are. So 3 for 3 today on the On the Spot podcast.
I love it.
I love a little bit of
so Jordan, we met you briefly, and in that brief conversation, this is what I love about getting off to these cannabis events. And sometimes MJ gets embarrassed when she'll say to me, "I think I'm just really going to see my friends," and I quickly try to remind her and say,
"It's work," and I'm like, "No, I love my friends. I just want to go see my friends."
Just substitute the word networking in there with seeing your friends. Like these events, I think it's completely about the people. I mean, it's the event is the packaging, but I mean, the people is what makes the event, and it's what makes all of our
That's why it doesn't
journeys
feel like work.
Yeah,
to me. Like as soon as I met Jordan and he started talking about his story, and which we will get into later, but I was just like, oh my God, like this is yet another person that cannabis has changed their life, and now he's going about it changing other people's lives. Mm-hmm. With the education. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should stop because I'm jumping ahead.
she'll get way too far down this rabbit hole. Ask him your favorite question.
Okay, but you know what's funny though? I just have to say, for a long period of time, people didn't even care what the event was in cannabis. It was just an excuse to get together, especially post-pandemic.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Very true. That's true. I mean, like that's why we have 420 and 710, and I think we did. Was it February 10th we did, because it was like halfway to 420 one year, just because we didn't want to wait.
We'll just throw one in there.
Sure, why not? But okay, so I'm gonna ask the question. It's literally the only question we ask on the show because it's my favorite question. Is I always am curious about your first experience with cannabis, whether it was like how you consumed it. Was it a pleasant experience? Did it lead to an everyday journey? Did you kind of take a break from it? What was your first experience?
It's funny because as often as I will either speak on my show or do something like this, no one has ever asked me that question specifically about my first interaction. Just, when did I, but not how did I?
Okay.
I remember specifically, my brother was he was in probably the 10th grade. So I was in the 7th grade, or maybe he was in the 9th and I was in the 6th. So I was about 12 years old, and we did bods for the first time, bottle tokes, where you would take a piece of hash and you would put it at the end of a cigarette and you'd put it into a bottle. Back then it was like an Everfresh bottle, and you create this beautiful hole in that Everfresh bottle using a dime or a penny. And
we lost you. Lost you.
There we are. You're back now.
You're back.
All the smoke would go into the bottle, and I'm going to put me on Do Not Disturb so that doesn't happen again. But all the smoke would go into the bottle, and you'd inhale it. And basically you were inhaling hash smoke as well as cigarette smoke. And it was disgusting. And it was disgusting. And it's not to say that I didn't smoke cigarettes throughout my life a little bit, and especially when I was younger, not as, a real adult, but I hated it. And that was my first experience with
hash.
with hash, but then once I was introduced to cannabis, it was cannabis all the way, always.
Okay.
I was
Just in
definitely
flower.
green over black. Yes, always.
Yeah, I always found the hash was too strong for me, and I agree. I was a cigarette smoker, but even doing the BTs, the bottle tokes, there's a different way you inhale cigarettes than you inhale the bottle toke, and I don't think you're meant to have nicotine in there.
Yeah, I mean, it was ugly. And you get that head rush. It was just no bueno. It
Yeah,
wasn't something that I, really, and it's not to say that I didn't do them for many, 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 many years to come, but I was either a masochist or I'm not really
yeah.
sure why, but maybe I was just a masochist.
Well, that would have been what I believed to be true growing up in the church. So I assume anybody using cannabis was some sort of off the wall, completely crazy human being. So now I'm finding out that there's only a small handful of cannabis users that are actually really crazy, but that's
We're
in
actually
conjunction
really
with the regular
And
world.
innovative.
lazy, right? And
Yeah.
lazy that there's, it's funny how there's that misconception how, it's that Spicoli jumping out of the VW van, right? With that
Yep.
haze of smoke and that lazy sort of connotation that's been
Yep.
associated with us. And the opposite is true. We're just not lazy, actually pretty motivated. And most of us who are, daily consumers of cannabis do so for solving for a need state.
Right.
We do that for a reason. We don't only do it for recreational reasons.
Yeah.
Well, and certainly, I mean, as a chef, I at one point in my life was married to someone who had gone to. She had been trained as a French chef, and she used to talk about the hell of the kitchen.
Mhm.
And you being a chef, I mean, certainly, if cannabis was disabling your ability in any way or causing any sort of
Especially being
laziness,
around food.
you can't pull that off. And I think what I learned over the last 5 years, as I've kind of freshly into kind of experiencing any of this, is that misperception of the lazy stoner was really founded in the fact of the only people who really talked about smoking weed were the people who didn't care.
Yeah.
And so all I ever saw was these lazy stoners, because the motivated people, the doctors, the lawyers, the chefs,
They
they
didn't talk
didn't
about it.
talk about it. So I would never have known they even smoked cannabis. So I only saw the people who were bold enough to sit there and go, "Yeah,
Well,
I smoke it. I don't
and
care."
what media portrayed. Like we've talked a couple times about Cheech and Chong and how brilliant they were at creating these characters. Of course, we all know that Tommy is more in line with the character that he plays on on
Camera.
media or television and camera. But uh, kudos to them for creating these characters, but not really, because they did us a disservice, because now we're fighting against this stigma.
Yeah, I even think back then, and I was going to say the same thing about Cheech and Chong. I just think these are characters.
Yeah.
I think that chefs are the biggest partiers and always have been. It's one of the biggest party industries, hospitality, that exist.
So true. Think of
And
all the chefs we know.
yeah, like I mean, from Coke to pills to you name it. I mean, think about that life for a moment and how you survive. And so, what I would argue is, I know very high functioning people that that were always consuming cannabis, and I was one of them, and didn't come out of the quote unquote cannabis closet until it became legal. Why? Because I was a father, and although my kids obviously knew that every time I dropped my son off at hockey, that I would go into the go to the parking lot and smoke a joint and then come in.
Yeah.
Obviously I smelled, but I didn't hide it very well, but I didn't come out and have those discussions with them until it became legal. So all of those people back then, were probably, obviously keeping it under wraps because it just wasn't legal. And these characters that were created are, are images and stereotypes that we are fighting against each and every day. And so, that's at the core of it. What I know to be true is most people in my world who smoke cannabis or consume cannabis on the daily, whether it's through, combustible means or otherwise, are actually some of the most high functioning, most successful people I know. And
Yeah.
so, I use this analogy. My life is always at peace when I have 15 saute pans going concurrently on the stove, right? I have my real estate agent coming over and the people that I purchased my new home from coming over so I can learn all about it tonight. So there's 6 people, 6 of us dining tonight. I'll probably make 4, 5, 6 different things. I have no idea what I'm making. There's ingredients in there. And that stuff doesn't stress me out because that's just what I enjoy. But it's, it's those that have created these stereotypes, quite frankly, that, it's what we unfortunately have to fight against when we're trying to secure dollars for partnerships, for events, what we're trying to, fight against when it comes to even my conversations with my new girlfriend and her friends, where it's, the conversation took place. Are you going to be okay dating a stoner? Right. And she's never done a drug in her life. She's never consumed cannabis. She's never, ever done anything like that.
So she's a newbie to all this stuff too.
She's in our boat. Okay.
Beyond.
That's beautiful.
Beyond.
That's awesome.
She's never, her first words to me were, and I love it because I make fun of her often, I've never, and I quote, done the marijuana.
Nice.
Oh, that's sweet.
Doesn't that say it all?
That's funny.
Anytime we put the word "the" in front of it, right? The weed.
The weed,
The
yeah.
weed.
No, that's awesome. That's actually one of my favorite things about being an advocate and an educator, and the non-stereotypical stoner. When you look at us, right? Like Jordan, you surprise people when you say, "Oh yeah," and I also cook with cannabis. And they're like, what? Yeah, I use cannabis and I can educate. And but it's those people that you touch those people that they have never even tried it or considered trying it.
What happened twice yesterday? So I moved up north I moved up north 2 hours north of Toronto, and to my dream place. And I've met both of my neighbors. One of them brought chocolate chip cookies over to say hello the other day and welcome.
Awesome.
The other one yesterday brought a blueberry loaf. Okay, and both are
foodies. That's awesome.
But they, when they asked me what I did for a living, because I introduced myself I'm not a cannabis chef. I'm a chef and cookbook author. I've been cooking for 31 years, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a basil chef or a cilantro chef. I'm not a cannabis chef.
Yeah.
When I tell them that, I travel and I educate on infusing cannabis in food and beverage, and I'm in the cannabis space, they look at me, perhaps a little, sideways. But then I follow it up with this. Tomorrow I leave for New Orleans. Why? Because on Monday I'm doing a culinary cannabis demonstration at the American Culinary Federation in New Orleans at their annual general meeting. And they look at me and they put their glasses up and they say, okay. Right. And so, you can do your Google, you're goggling on me and you can see my accolade, but that's not what it's about. When you start to validate cannabis by way of integrating it into mainstream culinary school curriculum, now we're talking about next level change. And we're talking about that going down the pipe. It's not them who I'm appealing to. It's their children, their children's children, and so on and so on, where cannabis will become part of their daily life, where they'll be able to purchase different cannabinoids and terpenes in tomato soup and seltzers 100%.
Yeah,
so
that's where I'm super excited, because I firmly believe that when the government made cannabis illegal, prior to that, I feel like not only were we smoking it, but we were making salves and medicine, and we were eating it and juicing it and using it like any other vegetable or plant out there. That once, like you're saying, you start at the culinary schools and it starts trickling down, and all of people like us, we start going to the restaurants and we can start eating this stuff. Then it gets into our cannabinoid systems. Like, this is my dream. I want cannabis everywhere, on hillsides, in restaurants.
And there will not be there's this misnomer, it's not a misnomer. There are people who classify and call themselves cannabis chefs. And I believe that term will fall by the wayside as culinary schools begin to introduce cannabis into the curriculum. Everyone will be a quote unquote cannabis chef, just like they are a lentil chef or a potato chef, right? We're just not. That's not who we are. It doesn't define us as culinarians. It's just another tool in our toolbox. This is how you do it. This is how you do it safely. It's how you do it repeatedly. That's at the core of the education. Yeah. And culinarians that I educate at the highest level, who are Michelin star, who have James Beard accolades, whomever they are, these people understand how to infuse cannabis in food and beverage in 5 minutes, because it's not brain surgery. Like at the core of creating great, I'm going to tell you a secret, and it's here first. Ready?
Okay.
Are you getting a pen?
Go ahead.
You ready? Okay. All right. At the core of creating great cannabis food and beverage, you ready? Here's the secret.
Salt.
No, not at all.
No.
Great food and beverage. That's the secret.
Yeah.
At the core of creating great cannabis food and beverage is creating excellent, phenomenal, over the top, incredible food and beverage. If your food is good, your food is good. If your drinks are good, they're good, regardless of cannabis being in them or not. My food doesn't change, right? So that's at the core of being a good culinarian. Just because you know how to infuse cannabis in food and beverage only makes you one thing: someone who infuses cannabis in food and beverage. Not a chef, not a cook, not a cannabis chef. It just makes you someone who infuses cannabis into food and beverage. But
that doesn't mean it's going to be good either.
That's the point. That's exactly the point. You know,
remember we just did judging for the ICC, the Indigenous Cannabis Cup, that's coming up soon in July, and I wouldn't even eat one of the items because I'll tell you, it literally, Jordan, no, I'm not shitting you. I used that word on purpose. Do you remember which one I'm talking about? I took it out of the black bag, and it literally, it was a peanut butter, a hard peanut buttery center with a chocolate layer on top, and it literally just looked like a turd. And I'm like seriously, you couldn't like sprinkle some sprinkles on it or like drizzle something else, because like so unappealing. And there's something to be said about visuals too. I just gotta say, it's gotta look good.
Well, I mean, that's certainly at the core.
It's an art, right? You're an artist. I mean, I everything you're saying there, I related to completely through my journey in comedy. I've been professionally doing it since 2009 with an unwanted break over the last few years. But at first when I started, because I grew up in the church, I always people wanted to label me as a Christian comic. And at that point I was like, no, hold on. I just want to be a comic.
You're like, I do no Christian
comedy.
I
don't even do Christian comedy. I just happened at that point to be a comedian who happens to be Christian, whereas a chef who happens to smoke cannabis. MJ just happens to smoke cannabis.
Okay, I'll say this. It irks me that on our podcast, we need to change it. So on our podcast, like who we are, it says that Marijane is a cannabis model or a cannabis advocate and cannabis model. And I'm like, yes, I am a cannabis advocate because I advocate for cannabis, but I am a model artist, but I consume cannabis. Just like you said, I'm a
it's not the defining factor.
No. And it's all too often, it's how people want to be pigeonholed. But what it is that I do every day is actually not fight against it, because I don't have to. The fact that I'm in the space, the fact that my friends are in the space, Romain Avril, who's come into cannabis, who we're going to write, we're writing another book together. There are tremendous talents who are now cooking with cannabis, who are using cannabis from a mixology or foodstuff perspective. And these people every day, their involvement in it of itself helps to destigmatize. They don't have to say a word. Their accolades speak for themselves in the quote unquote mainstream, right? My accolades speak for themselves in the mainstream. But it's really all about, bringing more mainstream brands, right? There are Boston Beer Company has Teapot. You
Yep.
think about
Oh,
Charles Beeler, who
Mhm.
produces 1 million bottles of wine a year in the States. I mean, all over, but he's partners with Joel Gott. He has a brand called Senorita, great cannabis beverage.
mhm,
And there are more. And so the more mainstream brands that become part of our ethos, the better off
mhm,
we will be.
Mhm.
Excuse me, and the sooner we will become mainstream.
mhm. Yeah, I'm super excited about all of the new stuff that we seen at that last event we went to. Like, I got hooked this summer on Teapot. So you just mentioned it, but on just their normal iced tea flavored, and now I seen they have a mango one, which I'm super excited to try. But going into one of those stores, you see all of the different things that are available, and it's so awesome. I'm super excited at what's coming next.
Yeah, I mean, I love to see it, and at the same time, I look at it twofold. There's two sides to me. One is educating the Canna curious, and that
Mhm,
comes in, by familiar ways of consumption. Obviously for us, there are amazing flower brands, and we all support
mhm,
them, but cannabis food and beverage really is, I believe, the future.
Mhm.
And there that's really the greatest opportunity, as I see it, is drawing those Canna curious into
mhm.
cannabis using those familiar ways, right?
Yeah.
Tomato soup or food and beverage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, not
So
everybody wants to smoke, right?
no, and I think that's going to slowly. I mean, just the response to what we like regular smoking cigarettes. Obviously, that form of consumption is
Mhm.
slowly being something that people aren't kind of leaning towards.
Oh, yeah, cigarettes, definitely, that's, like,
Um,
out.
when you're on your journey though, from a young age, and you're going through this journey, you're now in this space where obviously the infusing of food is very much a part of what you do, especially professionally. But where in that journey did that start to happen? Where did you start to experience that shift into, oh wow, I'm going to start infusing the food?
well, I mean, it's the story. I mean, the story goes back to when I was a kid, right? So the reason that I I tried cannabis very soon after trying hash was I had psoriasis. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, right? So I spent my lifetime searching for the quote unquote cure,
Mm,
and I found it, or something as close to it, um, 2016. And it's when I removed gluten, dairy, and refined sugar from my diet and began consuming, not smoking. I had always smoked cannabis, but consuming cannabis with the intention of becoming healthier. And in 60 days, my psoriasis went away.
mm,
And so I have always cooked with cannabis. When I went to culinary school in Florida, I we cook with it all the time. So it's just, that's not new to me. As a father of two incredible kids, now 20 and almost 20 and 16,
Mhm.
it's incumbent on me to set a good example. And so I waited until it was legal before I started talking about it with them.
mhm,
That was also when I came out and did it publicly, to where I was comfortable having articles written about what it is that I do, to where I
mhm,
was comfortable launching my own show, where I was comfortable just really being out there as one of the spokespeople on the planet for culinary and cannabis. And, it took some time, but, I'll also say this, like, I lost my culinary voice a long time ago, a long, long time ago. It just wasn't enough to just be, guy who can cook or plate. It just wasn't enough, and I just
mm,
lost my culinary voice when I changed my life through my diet. And imagine, as a culinarian, cooking with food all day, every day for a lifetime, and then realizing, at 43 years old, holy shit, like, it's actually ingredients, like foods, that's been negatively impacting my life this
mm,
entire time. So that's when I really went all in and realized that I could teach people both how to eat a cleaner diet and live a cleaner lifestyle or a healthier lifestyle with the inclusion of healthier ingredients, including cannabis.
Hmm.
That's huge. I just ate something before the show and my stomach was like not
We've
happy. And it's
we've
funny because it was probably tons of sugar and dairy and gluten.
yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking about that because that's been the last 5 years I've been on that journey too. 5 years ago, Jordan,
Well, you were a
I
lot
s-
happier.
well, not just that, but I stopped cooking my eggs in the microwave and actually started to cook them on
When
a
I
stove
first seen
top.
him do that, I was like, what are you doing? You know,
I
it only takes like 2 minutes
like
to fry
little
an egg.
like
What?
things like that, and then I started to I got my Fitbit and I started to track my food and I started to understand. I started to
Yeah.
enjoy now my breakfasts I used to save time by throwing my eggs in the microwave, and it were just plain eggs because I wanted to save time. Now my breakfast takes about an hour
Yeah.
process. I enjoy the
Yeah.
cooking process. I add stuff
It's
to
got
it,
avocados and
and
spinach and onion and all
I've
kinds of crap
learned
in there.
I've learned so much though about that, and now I've also come to realize in this same 5-year journey now
Yeah.
the possibility that cannabis can be one of those superfoods within, I talk a lot about the avocado and spinach and these type of things,
For the
and I'm like,
turmeric.
so for me, I think the route that you're
Mhm.
talking about, and when you talk about it being the future, absolutely. Like I'm like, what are those other ingredients that I need
Yeah,
to
he's
add
ready for the
to
next
my
steps.
food
He's like, how do I get
to
more?
maximize my health and my
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I say often is, and truly only in the last couple weeks because I've been just insanely busy, but um, I'm talking to people about this every single day,
Mhm.
and really at the core of what I say is this: it's cannabis has taught me a lot, right? Mostly about the cannabinoid system. We're an end of one, says Dr. Deb Kimless, right? We are all an end of one. We're all individual. What works for me may not for you.
Mhm.
You know, what I'm sensitive to, you may not be sensitive to, and so on and so on. What I would say is this: at the core of what seems to be bothering most of us in 2023, or a lot of us, is inflammation. And although I don't play a doctor on TV, I use anecdotal, everything, all of my data points are based on anecdotal, not scientific experiences. And so I would say inevitably that refined sugar is the devil,
Mhm.
and it causes a ton of inflammation, and it is in most things that we purchase. And if we can easily, and I always say 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. Don't think of me. My story is a little bit different, right? And I talk about it at some point, I'm sure, but my new book really describes what this journey has been about. But I talk about, my wholesale changes. Not everyone needs to make wholesale changes.
Mhm.
Incremental change plus incremental change plus incremental change. At
Mhm.
the end of the year or two or three, you've made massive wholesale changes.
Yep.
And so I would begin always with refined sugar. Once people do that, remove the inflammatory ingredients. Remove the nightshade vegetables. There's what we call the autoimmune protocol, the AIP, where you're really stripping it down, and then you're actively and methodically adding
Mhm.
back more ingredients or some ingredients into your life.
Mhm.
I know personally, raw tomatoes don't agree with me, but cooked tomatoes are no issue. Potatoes are no issue, although it's not an ingredient I should eat. Rice I've stayed away from forever. Eggplant I haven't eaten in 8 years.
Mhm.
Oh, wine I haven't had in 20 years, easily.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's the sugar.
Yep. Yeah, we talk about that a lot too. That's
Mhm.
I'm fully on board with that. I mean, it's funny when people put up all these other battles, even in the realm of cannabis, and it's like when we look at all the number one killer of this of our society right now, it all kind of all those the heart diseases and the diabetes and the
Oh,
cancers and everything. It all seems to go back to this other core, and people are fighting the wrong devils.
I
It's
get
very
told
true.
I get told all the time that, oh, you look so fit or you're so skinny or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I literally live off caffeine, sugar, and cannabis. Like Timmy has
It's
said
not
to me numerous times, like, I'm surprised you have enough calories to even live. Like you're
So
even still
true.
standing. Like and
but she's
my
not
diet
alone in
is,
that diet
yeah, it's
though.
the average, I want to say American, but North American diet.
You know, it's funny. I call it the big gulp culture, and I don't think it's, it's just my own reference to, we've been so programmed to go to the store and buy food and not, if the one thing, not one thing, the pandemic taught us quite a few things,
Hmm.
but this is one thing the pandemic taught us is, how many of us, how many times did you see someone making um, sourdough bread or something
Hmm.
along
Mm,
those lines? Like every day somebody was making a sourdough bread, or every day somebody was making something. There was a newfound love of making food, and
mm,
people got healthier. Right, the universe, like our Earth, got healthier. Everybody got healthier. Now not mentally. Mentally,
Hmm.
certainly, a lot of us struggled, but
right.
physically, I think maybe a lot of us got a little bit healthier.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, one thing I know in the very beginning of the pandemic, well, when I think it was the time when there was no toilet paper, like that time, what I found interesting was that when we were running out of things, for some reason, the health food section was always fully stocked. It's like it was crazy to me in the moment because I'm like, at the time when we're all supposed to be trying to be as healthy as possible to have the best immunities as possible, people were still choosing to eat like shit.
well, I
It
mean,
depends on the person.
it's also education. I mean, you and
Hmm.
I both agree with that.
Yeah.
It's about the immune system, but
Mhm.
it's also, you're out of work, and that's why, if you're out of work in the pandemic, and is your first thought health, or is it survival? And at that,
Yep.
Oh, chips are so much more,
yeah, I mean,
gratifying than
but it's,
spinach.
price point, right? It's
Sure.
also
Yep.
price point. So there's this
Hmm.
misconception sometimes that, often I find, that good food or healthy food needs to be cost prohibitive, and that's just not the case. It
Yep.
does take a little bit of know-how, like, those apples that might be turning a little bit brown, that are in the, best before section, and they're on discount. Aren't those perfect for applesauce? I mean, what's the
Yeah,
Hmm.
difference, right?
yeah,
The bananas that are brown, well, aren't you turning them brown anyways and putting them in your freezer for baking bread? Like,
Yep.
or baking whatever. So there's a
yeah.
million and one different ways to do this. In addition to, I always recommend that people do what I do, and I'm new to an area, and I don't know the answer to this question, but I will soon enough, when I build relationships with these local farmers. And
Hmm.
you build relationships with these people, you support these people, and just because a carrot might have two legs, or it's
Oh,
wide and fat in one area and skinny in the next, whatever that looks like, who
Hmm.
yeah,
cares? A carrot tastes like a carrot. You
yeah.
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, but they can't
especially that
send that
one's
off to the store.
right. It's not going to the store.
Yeah,
It can't go to the store. So
yeah,
that's why it
which is
doesn't.
sad.
It is sad.
Yeah, no, I think education, you touched on it earlier, and you're like, you can take those apples and turn them into applesauce, or you can take those bananas and bake something out of them. But like, I will tell you honestly that when I was raised, my mother brought me up with, I'm a byproduct of, if you want to make a meal, most likely you pull the meat out of the freezer and it has instructions on the box on how to cook it. The vegetables you grab are in a can and you heat them up in the microwave. It was this was what I was how I was taught you're supposed to make dinner, and we ate it for years and we didn't die.
The first thing I did when I moved in here, and I'm trying to sell all this, stuff, but this is one of the first things I'm trying to sell, is the microwave. I
Good
needed
for you.
space, but it's the first thing. I haven't used a microwave. I can't even tell you in how long.
Yeah.
They're so
Maybe
bad.
they're just no bueno. And I haven't used an air fryer either. Like, I just,
Yeah.
you know, I'm I'm a little suspect about that technology. I don't have anything to substantiate that. It just
Mhm.
scares me a little bit. But my my girlfriend said to me yesterday, we were shopping, and she's like, I'm going to buy you this popcorn maker. And I said, but why? I already have many. She's
Mhm.
like, you do? I said, yes. They're called pots and pans.
Right.
And lids.
Yeah.
I said pots and lids. I mean, that's how I make popcorn. I put
Yeah.
them in a pot and I make it with a lid, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need a whole lot. Anyways,
That's funny, but if you don't have the skill and you don't have the knowledge on
But
how to
It's
make
all
popcorn in a pan or
yeah,
in a
it's all
pot,
the
it's
it's all
like
the knowledge.
all education, that's at the core of everything that we are, right?
What's that relationship? I mean, we talk a lot about our relationship. I mean, you you're in this relationship now with a
with
newbier
someone
than
who
my
doesn't
newbiest.
consume the marijuana.
How did that come about? And was there a weird transition? Was like how,
Is
Well,
she
it's
ever gonna
really
try
interesting.
it? That's what I'm
This
curious
is the
about.
first time. This is the first time I'm actually talking about this publicly. My wife and I were together 31 years since I was 19 or 20 or whatever.
yeah.
We separated this past November, and she is, like me a lot of the time in terms of cannabis consumption, and
Mm.
it was very normal, right? It was just very normal. Um, when I met Corey,
Mhm.
it was a very interesting tiptoe, and at the same time, you know, I can't be that. I'm very, very consistent in my life. What you see on social media is what you see here, is what you see in my real life. Like, there's no real life.
Awesome.
It's just everything is
Yeah,
real.
yeah,
That's just
yeah.
who I am. So did I smoke less? Yes, I did when I first met her. Why? Because it was really a matter of circumstances. She lives in a 15-story, condo, and
Yeah.
I don't love heights, and so there's just a couple things that play here. But it was certainly something that I talked about openly, talked
Mhm.
about from a medicinal standpoint, that this is my medicine, that this is, I consume thousands of milligrams of cannabis a day. I do a lot of diffusing. Like, I mean, cannabis is just in everything that I do.
Mhm.
Um, Not the least of which is it's how I pay my bills, right? It's what I believe in. So she understands, and
Mm.
I assure you, there are, and I don't call it a habit, it's not habitual, but there are worse medications, than
Yeah.
cannabis.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we met at an event where I was emceeing, and she had a tray of cookies.
Well, they
So
were real cookies, but they were prop because I dyed them green because I wanted to give them away to people, but I didn't want to give away infused cookies, but I wanted them to get the gist that they were infused.
yeah,
So, and Timmy, that's how
so
we started the
so
conversation.
we
And
were brought together by food, by
yeah, and cannabis
cannabis
food.
infused food,
Yeah.
and
well,
Yeah, he ate like 6 cookies that day, and he was like, "Wait,
yeah.
there's weed in this?"
Then
I
I
was
was
like,
like,
"No,
wait a
no, no,
minute, I
no,
need to
no.
find out about this.
No, there's no weed in these ones, don't worry."
you know what I learned very quickly as a single man for a very short period of time. It's funny that I was with someone for 31 years and automatically got into a relationship, but
Yeah, I hear you.
um, I I learned very quickly that women do like men who cook and play music. So, I had that going for me. I did lure her through food. I made her tacos on the first date. So there was,
Okay. Our first date, I came into the house and the fire alarm
I
went
made
off
him
because
spaghetti. I literally, the smoke
she
detector
burned
was going
spaghetti.
off, and I opened up the door. I was like, "Come in, come in." And I was opening the window, and
It's a good thing she's got good cookies, Jordan. I'll tell you that.
right.
my baking is on point, but my cooking, not so much.
Well, I was from if you can recall, kind of conversations that you had with it was Corey, right? One of the things that the reason why Mary Jane and I are even together is because I had come across somebody who, although I later found out she was infused with cannabis. I came across somebody who didn't have those stereotypes that we talked earlier.
It's not
Had
the
I
lazy stoner. It's the
had she not
functional
had those
stoner.
green cookies, I never would have thought that she was a cannabis user. There was nothing about her. She was fully functioning. She was funny. She was alert. There was so much about her.
I was alert.
Yeah, I mean, it blew my mind. I was like, how is she not on the ground?
Fully functioning. Fully functioning. I love.
Fully functioning. Was that like, was Corey surprised at everything that you were doing, or she?
No, no. I think what she realized is, I don't necessarily sit and just smoke joints like people smoke cigarettes. I take a couple puffs and I put it out and I go about my business. It's just
Right.
not really a big deal at all. I've microdosed mushrooms many, many, many times, likely without her even realizing it, because it's just medicine, right? It's just nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the next step of education with Timmy, because when we first met, I was also microdosing with psilocybin for my premenstrual dysphoria disorder, and I tried to keep that a little bit more on the DL for the beginning, and I didn't do it as often or more when he wasn't around, and now I'm at the point where I can take it and he doesn't know. Yeah.
Wait, you're doing it secretly behind my back?
Right now I'm high.
Well, we're gonna have to
Microdose
talk about
before the
this.
show.
I think it's a love me for me sort of thing. My perspective, it's if I'm in a, I've spent, I've spent 31 years in a relationship, right? Like my entire life. I'm 51 years old, so I want to be me. I'm proud of me. I'm very, very thankful to and for cannabis and all the people in that ethos for saving my life and for really helping me finding that voice again. So if I'm going to be with someone, I'm going to be with them because they're all in for all of me, not just
right.
Yeah. Well, I find, especially in the consumer non-consumer relationship, well, I guess any relationship, it's about communication, understanding. It's about education,
From both sides.
right?
Yeah.
Because there was some difficulties that Timmy experienced with me having to take extra breaks and things like that. But there are things that I have had to experience going places with you where a consumer is not traditionally welcomed in like a
I would do I would do church shows, a lot of church shows, and she would have to like go, can I even be me here? Do I have to go hide in the car in the parking lot during the intermission? Those type of things.
I would spend a lot of time in the parking lots during the show because I knew everybody was inside, so I would sneak out to the parking lot and consume, and then like after I would get everything loaded in the vehicle and you were still inside mingling, I would sneak back out to the parking lot. But the best moment was the day that I was out there waiting for Timmy, and one of the tech guys came out, and he started, obviously he could smell me, and he came over and he started chatting, and which led to an educational conversation, and it was nice because I all of a sudden felt like, oh well, maybe I don't need to be hiding over in the corner in there. So it's about education.
Yeah, and so here's what I would say, right? Because I'm navigating it as we're just real time. I'm navigating.
Yeah.
So next Friday, I'm going to New Orleans tomorrow, and so when I get back, Corey's dad is coming here for dinner.
Nice.
So will I smoke a joint in his presence? No, I won't.
Right.
But the reason is because I don't want to go from 0 to 100. I want to go 0 to 1, 1, 2, and so on.
I remember those days with your parents. It's baby steps.
But the truth is, my parents have known that I am a very high functioning pothead for a very, very, very long time. I have never in my entire life ever smoked a joint in front of them. Ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not one time. So, I will go outside and smoke it and then come back in, and they'll say, oh,
Mhm.
oh great, I have the munchies, Jordan. And they'll a little bit, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, but
Yeah.
I won't smoke the joint, but the word cannabis has been used. And so
Yes.
that's coming from a family where they don't do the marijuana.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I mean? Like that's a step in the right direction for us as a community to
Yep.
Yes. Yep. And they actually might even be curious too, but because they haven't been around it or whatever, that could even just lead to conversation when you get to level 3. Who knows?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, there's some times where you need to kick the door down and sometimes where
Yeah.
you need to walk smoothly. Like,
Well, you've had some good combos with your mom
my
recently.
my mom and dad, I don't even know. My dad wasn't very vocal about any of it, but I mean, just
He caught me. He
recently,
caught me smoking a joint. He was the first one because I used to sneak down and I would smoke my joint and then go back up and
yeah, but
yeah,
we slow played it, and I think it's just a matter of
you don't want to scare
it's just
anybody.
basic respect for human beings and realizing that just because they're uncomfortable with it and
Yeah.
maybe even against it,
Mhm.
the answer isn't always, well, I'm just going to prove my point and smoke in front of you until I break you down. It's like,
Yeah.
no, sometimes it's okay to slow play it out.
Mhm.
Let's focus on the relationship first
Well, like Jordan
and
says, I want you to
slowly
love
build.
me for me. And then, hey, I also consume cannabis. It's
Yeah,
not a defining factor of who I am. So that's why he's like, I won't smoke the joint. I don't need to smoke the joint.
yeah.
Yeah, but and it doesn't mean that I won't take an edible or have some
Yeah.
Right.
whatever. But
And you're not,
I generally I sneak off with my vape is what I do. If I'm in that situation where I want to be discreet, just sneak off to the
so you're not going to, so basically you're not going to cook an infused meal for him when he comes over.
not for him. No, not for him. Not yet.
So what is the education? What do you see that is the education in regards to not just the infusing of cannabis, but in this journey of people understanding cannabis?
Yeah,
What is the next hurdle?
it's not the next, it's the first, right? It just we're
Okay.
still at the first. I don't think it's the next. I think we're I don't think we've scratched the surface yet. We don't have mainstream CPG. We are not reaching the kind of curious where they are, right? We're reaching them where they're not. Dispensaries. My father's not going into a dispensary, right? The
Yep.
kind of curious are not going into dispensary to necessarily to seek out advice from a bud tender necessarily. And I have a lot of bud tender friends, and we have a great amount of respect for those who are at the forefront of
Mhm.
our business and really responsible for the success of certain brands, because
Mhm.
people, there are some really good ones out there, and then just like everything else, there's those that aren't really all that educated. And so my father's not going to go in and get medical advice, nor are they allowed to sling medical advice. So
Yeah.
we're not reaching them where they are, right? This is an issue. I hope that in time that will be remedied, but I just don't think we're the first step is education. The first step is to stop minimizing or um, stop, for all intents and purposes, editing or sanitizing the cannabis content that we curate on social media platforms. It's time that we are allowed to be able to and freely educate the planet where they are. Starting with social media. Otherwise, we're really sort of bound to experiential, right? So Lyft, and I know you were at Kind,
Yep.
where I love Kind, and I was with Kind, and we did some of the first events together, and there's nobody who does it better in that vein than Kind. There's no question about it. But that again helps to normalize. When you look at a situation like that, it does help to normalize our plant. Inevitably, we need to begin to educate and continue to educate.
Mm.
And then it becomes to meeting people where they are. I'd love to see some terpene forward, beverages and, in Loblaws and elsewhere. I'd love to be able to start to educate people where they are in grocery stores, not in dispensaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's what we've really enjoyed about Lift. It's one of the reasons why we do this podcast is because we want to. It's getting people into the door to even. I mean, we can educate all we want, but if there's still those barriers, like you say with the dispensaries, we talked a lot about shows, a lot of cannabis conversations that were being had online were unfortunately the stereotypical 20 to 35-year-old guys sitting in a smoke-filled room talking about how much they love weed. Even if they threw out an occasional tidbit of education along the way, nobody in the Canna Curious world is going to come into that environment. And one of the reasons why we do this podcast with communication is because people want to hear real people's stories.
But once again, it's experiential. It's just we're trying to get people to hear other people's experiences, and even like Jordan said, it's all individual.
Sure.
What works for me might not work for you,
and that's why when you talk about sort of being a gateway, food and beverage is that gateway. People don't, unless their schedule doesn't dictate, people don't say no to an opportunity to come and eat some hey, do you want to come to a night to celebrate a brand, come and eat my food and have some cannabis beverages? Like, who says no to that? Right. So like even the Canna Curious, like we've fed Forbes magazine before, who's never had a cannabis product in his life. We've fed other, writers who have come in to have experiences. We've fed people who have never experienced cannabis before. Why are we able to do that? Well, at the core of that is the intention is not to get you high. The intention is not solely to get you high.
Right.
We have what's called the entourage effect. So if I tell you, the entourage effect is only the different cannabinoids and terpenes and flavonoids and everything else working in harmony, would you believe me? I wouldn't, because it's not only that. It's, hey, do you like the people sitting beside you? Do you like the music that's being played? Do you like the ambiance? Do you like this? It's everything working in harmony. So if I tell you this, hey, listen, I'm going to create 10 courses. I'm going to have some infused beverages. I'm going to have a really safe space where you can consume, where you can, socialize. You're going to be surrounded by people you know and love. The music will be great. You in? Everyone's in. And so that's what I create, is that entourage effect. And so at the core of what I'm really trying to do is obviously educate people in terms of what cannabis food and beverage can be. Not what you know it to be, gummies, cookies, and brownies. And I make all three of those. None of them have refined sugar. They're all it's all technique. But it's about educating people on different cannabinoids, on what terpenes are and the benefits of terpenes. We know sage and doTERRA have been successfully come to market with essential oils. Well, what is the difference between essential oil and a terpene? I don't know. You tell me, because they're basically one and the same and offer the same type of health and wellness benefits from my non-medical experience, right? But so it's really about educating people on that you don't have to get high, that there's that there's health and wellness benefits to different cannabinoids and terpenes that don't include or have the side effect of getting you high. As a matter of fact, we have all these different cannabinoids and terpenes, and all except one don't really get you high.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to see a space where people, especially newbies, can go and have that culinary experience. I know they're doing this in the States, but I mean, up here in Canada, it'd be nice to have like a space where you could go and try out, like you're saying, like even like a 4-course meal and just go
they
for
exist
the
all
evening.
over. They exist all over Canada.
Oh, I haven't found one.
See,
that's what keeps me employed.
What kind of doobie is this?
That's what keeps me employed. No, there's many. I mean, Pat Newton would do them. Romaine Avro would do them. I would do them.
Oh, yes. No. But I mean, like, I don't mean private events.
Oh, you mean restaurants?
I mean public, where
I see what
like,
you're saying. Yeah.
One
day.
Like, see, I would like to have a location, like a spot in Toronto.
One day. Yeah,
So
one day.
so
Yeah.
we met you at Lyft. Obviously, you're on this educational thing. You want to
Yeah.
just bring this thing to the people. Lyft, obviously,
Experiential,
we've already shared.
educational.
We've shared that Lyft creates a good doorway in. It's a safe space. A really
For
I saw it
newbies and fun
as a
for
newbie
doobies.
place. You know, though, you're taking a lot of what you're talking about here, and you're really going to platform it in a
Oh yeah,
new
you're
way
doing
with
something
Lyft, right? Down in
special.
the States.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and started the precursor was Toronto,
Yeah.
through the Diners Club, where my colleague Barry Smith created that name, and it was just brilliant. And we created some amazing content, food and beverage content. We had 4 panels throughout the 2 days, and 2 different. We had a cooking demo and a mixology demo. And so it was really quite amazing. And so it was the precursor to doing something in the States with Lyft, which is called Taste at Lyft Cannabis Food and Beverage Experience. And at the core of it is educating people, whether it be in existing or emerging markets, on everything cannabis food and beverage supply chain. So including hospitality, tourism, culinary, mixology, and so on. But it's all about CPG. It's a 1-day event. There are amazing, very cool panels, very interesting subject matter. There's a baking demonstration, a mixology demonstration. We have this amazing, amazing reception, which is the crescendo of the day, which is this chef battle. And the chef battle is, it's going to be, 3 chefs competing, and it's going to be just incredible. It's going to be lights out.
Sounds really fun.
Like throwing knives at each other, that type of thing?
Yes, you got it. Big
Sweet.
time.
No,
time.
no,
And
I think I seen
spoons.
And
and
spoons.
spoons. No spooning. Just forking.
I like to throw those spoons around.
No, I thought I seen like everyone's gonna get like the same ingredients and they're gonna have X amount of time to do it in. I've been checking up on what's going on out there in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's
Hoping
going to
get
be
out
cool. The ingredient boxes, the mystery ingredients will be food and beverage brands, cannabis food and beverage brands. Those are the must-use ingredients. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Is one of the mystery ingredients cannabis?
No.
Something infused.
No,
Cannabis
okay.
infused,
All right,
yeah.
that's just a flat out front. Okay, all right. So that's good. You're doing that. You're going to be doing that in San Fran coming up.
That's in August, right?
And is this something that you're planning? Is this overall vision of that something that goes outside of Lyft? Is that something that you want to kind of expand and create into other ventures?
I mean, this is something I conceptualized, and it's my baby. But I brought it to Lyft because I believe in Lindsay Roberts. I believe in the team, and it was the right opportunity to bring that to them. And I look forward to making it a success with them.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what about so the stuff you're writing? What are you writing now? What's
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of projects on the go right now. My new book, it's sort of one of those situations where the shoemaker's children doesn't have shoes. My own book has just been sitting in my inbox waiting to edit. It's been a very slow process because I've been writing, co-authoring a new book with, his name is The Golden Gully, Bilal Bhatti, and Bilal has about 8 million followers between TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. He's huge, and he's such a nice young man. And we did a book called, basically it's all about cooking without measurements. And he's a young Pakistani man, and so we cooked a lot of all food from his upbringing, and food stuff that his mom made. So this is being published by Random House, and so that one just shot. We just did the shoot in Toronto, actually, where Romain Avril, the loop is actually closing. Romain Avril, who's my good friend and Michelin star trained chef, and one of the greatest talents in Canada, he did the food styling for the book for us for Random House.
Nice.
And my new project is actually with Romain, and we're doing a new cannabis cookbook.
Nice.
So there's a lot of writing projects on the go for sure.
Nice. I look forward to that cookbook.
Yes, yes.
What do you? When do you feel Corey would be ready for an infused meal? I guess you guys don't sit down for dinner. Do you have to make one for yourself and one for her?
No, we don't. She doesn't. No, I'm not. No, I'm good with her. Not, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
No, I'm good with it. Actually, I'm good
Well,
with her.
we're at year 5, and Timmy's just now thinking about infusing some sort of like maybe a CBD, which I keep telling him it should be equal, should at
So,
least be equal.
the thing is, what I would say to you is, and now in thinking about the answer, the truth is that one of the things that she and I, have in common is our love of health. And
Hmm.
so she's incredibly driven by, putting good things in her body. And so she lives a pretty clean lifestyle. It's not to say we don't cheat. I made a loaf of bread the other night and we devoured it together, right?
Right.
But she does eat a clean life and takes a lot of supplements and so cannabis is something. Would it bring value to her? Non-psychoactive cannabinoids? Absolutely. Am I ready to get her high? No chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for the high either,
No,
but I am.
You were in the beginning interested to see what the hubbub was all about.
Oh yes, yeah. And
He
my
was like,
first
"What is this
my
about?"
first smoke was incredibly disappointed because it did nothing, and I was like, seriously? So like for 40 years, like this is what it was all about. And then it ended up ruining my bowling score, and
That was the
that
second
was
time, yeah.
I gave up after that. There's some things you just can't risk.
You gave up bowling or you gave up cannabis?
I gave up cannabis. Oh yeah, well it was if it was going to be one or the other, it's like
Which is funny because we just went bowling the other day, and I'm pretty sure I won.
it was
And
one game out of 3,
I
Jordan.
always
That's
consume.
still less than 50%, right? Yeah. Listen, there's so much more we could talk about. I mean,
for
and
sure.
hopefully even outside of podcasts, just to get together. I mean, the fact is our stories. There's so
I
many
definitely
things
would
that
love
cross
to try
paths.
some of these plates. I know you never play. It sounds like you don't plan. I know you said you're making dinner tonight, and you've got the in-laws coming over to visit shortly. And I was going to ask you, ooh, what are you planning on making? But I'm sure you got no plan, and that's the way you like it, and I'm sure it'll be delicious.
Well, it's not. It's not that there isn't a plan. It's that even when I create my experiences, it's hard for me. So if you're my client,
Yeah.
you really do have a lot of control, except
Mhm.
for what each dish is. Meaning,
Right.
you
Okay.
tell me your dietary restrictions, you tell me your likes and dislikes, and I create a menu around that based on seasonality. And so I don't know the ingredients I'm buying. Like I can tell you I'm cooking a bunch of vegetables, but I don't know. Is that, what's going to be great at the market, what's in
Yep.
season,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
on. What do my farmers want me to buy?
So you have a plan. It's just not detailed.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
yeah, I have no idea. It really is dictated by you, the client. You
Yeah.
tell me what you love to eat, and I create around that for sure.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
And that's a true artist.
And do you get offended when people don't call you chef?
No, no, never. No, not at all. It's To be honest, it's funny. It's just my name. It's funny. It's just my name. Yeah, it's just my name. I don't think it's
Yeah.
when people don't. It's just no, not at all. Most people do. It's weird, but most people do.
There's I know a few who are like, I'm a chef. It's kind of like the same people who are like, it's doctor, and it's like, okay, fine, we'll throw the
That's
title in
not
there if you want.
But you're not my doctor.
No, you don't strike me as that. Chef Jordan, Jordan, thank you so much for this. Like you said,
Yes.
this came from one chance meeting. Well, I guess maybe you were actually brought deliberately to us, maybe on that day in Lyft, but
By one of those amazing people that you already had mentioned at Lyft.
yeah. I think it was Lisa that brought you up, but we
didn't mention Lisa.
right away we were like we really wanted to talk more to you. We appreciate you taking time to
and
talk
to spread
to
the
us.
word what you're doing too, because like that's amazing. The taste at Lyft is amazing. I'm excited for the cookbook.
Yes, called Will How I Found My Health Through Food. It's all my pictures, all my stories, and all my recipes. So I'm really excited. It should come out very soon if I can just make those shoes, if I could just make those damn shoes.
Well, I'm celebrating my 10-year anniversary of my first book. My second book was written 9 years ago and hasn't been worked on since. So I'm still working on that particular shoe. It can take a while sometimes.
It can indeed. Yes, it can indeed.
Where can people find you to end this off? How do people get a hold of you? How do they find you?
Yeah, everywhere at jordanwagman.com and my website, jordanwagman.com. Yeah, it just at Chef Jordan Wagman on all social media. DM me wherever I am, and happy to help. And mostly, I mean, this is really at the core of what I would love to offer. Your audience is if I can help in any way, if I can answer any questions with regards to making a cannabis experience safer, healthier, more repeatable. If I can help with an autoimmune disease, if I can help with a diet, if I can help life in any way, my DMs are always open.
That's awesome. You might actually get an email from me.
I've just sent you one while you were talking there. So, Jordan, thank you again so much. Have an amazing day, and we hopefully will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.